Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. Okay. Well, I just want to welcome you all. Such a fantastic crowd. We always get a big crowd with Anne, and I think then this spring day at the garden has also helped. So thank you for battling parking to be here. My name is Kate Gleason, and I'm the membership director. And again, I always like to ask, but especially on a big crowd like today, how many brand new members in the crowd? Any first-time member speaker series? A few. Okay, good. Well, welcome to the garden. We're always here to help. So as you dive into membership, please let us know if we can make your experience better in the year ahead. Before I introduce our speaker, I do want to talk about a few things with spring here. First, a reminder that this weekend marks the sort of the spring kickoff. We open the children's garden this weekend, as well as daily tram tours. So those will be open through October. If you're a member at the friends and family level or higher, those access to both the trams and the children's garden is included with your membership. If you're at the individual or garden level, you would have received some bonus bloom passes with your membership packet, and those also are good for free access to both of those amenities. The other thing that I want to make sure everybody knows about is that spring and summer Thursday nights are back. So on all Thursdays, starting this week till 7:30, but starting next week until 8 p.m., the garden is open every Thursday evening. So that is through the end of September. So it's a great time to enjoy the garden at sunset. It's not crowded. It's just a really relaxing evening. We also have on those Thursdays, some of those select Thursday nights, we're having a program that we started last year called Nature Speaks. Nature Speaks is a program that provides opportunities to connect with nature through various art forms. One that's coming up that I'm really excited about on Thursday, April 24th, it's Nature Speaks Through the Written Word. For this Shakespearean night at the Garden, we're teaming up with St. Louis Shakespeare Festival to host Garrett Quayle, who's the author of a book called Botanical Shakespeare. She's taken all the botanical references in Shakespeare and put together a lovely illustrated volume. So she'll be here to talk about that at 6 p.m. It's a free lecture right in this spot. You don't have to, unlike speaker series, you don't have to register at 6 p.m., just drop by. And then after her program, we will have actors from Shakespeare Festival all around the garden performing. So a really fun way, again, to connect with nature. So that's Thursday night, and just watch for those pop-up Nature Speaks programs throughout the spring and summer. Speaking of lectures, I have to do a plug for our next member speaker series. We have two great ones coming up next month. As part of our celebration of Shaw Nature Reserve's 100th anniversary celebration, we're welcoming photographer Danny Brown, who's a wildlife photographer. If you've seen the concourse that connects this building to the visitor center, you've seen our lovely photo display, and a couple of those photos are actually Danny Brown's. He's been photographing the wildlife and the landscapes at Shaw for decades. And when we were deciding on what program we would do to celebrate 100 years, Quinn Long, who's the director of Shaw Nature Reserve, is like, you have to bring Danny Brown, and everybody's just going to ooh and ah at his photos. So that is April 22nd, 11 o'clock, right back here. Registration for that is open. And then in May, we're going to welcome Gene Pulliam, who is a former president of the St. Louis Hospice Society, and he will be here to share his expert knowledge. If anybody went on the garden tour last year, Gene's home was on the garden tour. It was in Glendale, right off Sappington Road. So if you were there, you saw his charming garden, just one of the best. So Gene will be here to share his knowledge. And that date is, let me see, I need to check, May 6th, also at 11 a.m. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to today's presenter, Anne Carpenter. Anne is the owner of Kitchen Conservatory, a member of the St. Louis Herb Society, and a self-professed cooking nut. For over 35 years, Kitchen Conservatory has offered the finest kitchen tools and has helped countless people learn to become better cooks through more than 900 classes a year. Anne has trained in restaurant kitchens in Italy, France, and across the United States. And if you have been coming to Member Speakers Series, you know that we always have Anne as sort of a teaser for the St. Louis Herb Society sale. So Anne's programs are always popular, as is that sale. And let me introduce Mary Hammer, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the Herb Society sale next month.
Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
Hi, everybody. This is a lovely crowd. Yes, we're here to publicize our herb sale for members only, and that's all of you. We open on Thursday, April 24th from 5 to 7:30 p.m., and that is a members-only event. How many of you have been to our sale before? Oh, okay. So you know that the lineup starts early, and it's a little bit like Black Friday at Best Buy. But somehow we all managed to get through it, and we'll be in the same we'll be in the same location as we were last year, in the tent in the bus lot. So again, that's April 24th, Thursday night is for members only, and then Friday we're open from 9 till 5 or however long the plants last, and that will be open to anyone, so you can come on Friday as well. I just want to, as far as the St. Louis Herb Society goes, we do maintain the herb garden here behind the Henry Shaw House. We'll be starting our planting in May, and you're welcome to come and see us anytime there. We also we were founded in 1941, so we've been around for a while. And our mission is to educate people about herbs, and that's one of the things that Anne is helping us with today. Anne, by the way, has been a member of the Herb Society for 31 years, and this is her 14th speaker's talk about herbs. So with no further ado, Anne Carpenter.
You want to come first? Thank you very much, Mary. I think the size of this crowd is proof that Italian food has conquered St. Louis. Everyone loves basil, everyone loves pesto, but we have to go beyond the pesto and just talk about basil for a minute. And the impetus for this talk was I had a customer who said to me, what can I do with my basil plant? It's going like gangbusters. And I said, well, pesto. He said, I'm tired of pesto. I want something beyond pesto. So here we are to talk about pesto. But first, I'm going to, somebody came into the thing and said, well, do we get a sample? I was like, well, we're kind of early. There's no, I don't have basil in my garden right now. So I had to go to I went to our supermarket and I picked up some packet of basils, which we've all purchased over the years, the little packet of the basil, of the herbs in the containers. But I thought I would talk first about, because this is what's available right now, is the basil that you can get in the supermarket. Both of these containers are 4-ounce containers. This one comes from some other place. It actually says New York, but I don't know where it's grown. And I want you to look, if you can see, what's in in this container. It's all stems. You don't eat the stems. When you pay the $6 or $5.99 to buy this package, you're buying stems. And there's very little basil. So that's why I was so excited. This is really a very brand new company here in the city of St. Louis. It's an urban garden. They're selling their product through the grocery stores at the exact same price of $5.99. And it is Vested Urban Farms. I looked them up last night. They were actually, this is your taxpayer money. It's a project that they got a grant from the state of Missouri to start this hydroponic basil farm. And they are growing the basil that is picked and in our supermarkets today, incredibly fresh. And look at the package, no stems. So if you're going to choose basil, you want to choose it without the stems, because you want stuff that's edible and not not edible, because it's the leaves we eat, not the stems. So what they do, and I went on the website and watched their little video. It's hydroponic, so they pull out their stem that's growing and then they just pick off the top, and so it's full of these beautiful florets in the package. So I'm giving a complete shameless plug for this farm. I'll be awaiting my check from them. But this is the kind of quality basil that you want to use and that you want to grow yourself. And I point this out, that they pluck it from the top, and then they put the plant back into the hydroponic to regrow, is because I have seen so many cooks and novice gardeners see a big, beautiful herb plant and they pull the leaves from the stem as opposed to the top. That is not what you should do to any herb plant. You never want to pick leaves off the bottom of the stem because you're actually harming the plant. The nicest thing you can do to an herb plant is cut it from the top, because then it regrows, then it develops more, then it gets bushy, and that's where you want it. You all get that perfume I'm getting from this? It's just, whew, it's an intense perfume of the basil plant that's coming alive here. But the picking it from the top then gets you this beautiful cluster of leaves, and then we have to talk about how to cut the leaves. Basil is a very delicate herb, and it's so delicate that if you take a knife and go chop, 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 you destroy it. The way basil is cut is that you roll it up into a little, you lay the leaves on top and roll it up together, and you take your knife and you cut it crosswise across the leaf, and you never cut it again. And that's called a basil chiffonade or a julienne cut. And then the basil will stay a little pretty. But you don't want to do that until you're ready to serve it, because it's so delicate and it can darken so easily that you want to treat the basil with absolute care. And the other thing that I love that Vested Urban Farms has done, and I think this is critically important, they write on the package, do not refrigerate. Basil likes it warm. Basil likes it hot. Your basil will last longer at room temperature than it will in the refrigerator. The refrigerator will darken the basil. What's important in terms if you want any storage of the basil is that the basil is dry. And sometimes when we get it, we wash it, the basil's then wet. So you have to dry the basil if you're going to have any kind of storage on it, because the water moisture will degrade the basil faster. But you all don't have to worry about purchasing basil, because everybody in this room is going to grow basil this year, right? And if you grow basil, all you have to do is to go out into your yard and pick it when you're ready. Now, one of the very important things to do with basil and other herbs is not to let it flower. So that's the other reason for picking it from the top of the plant, so it can regrow, regenerate, and develop more when you pick it off the top. But when the basil buds, it starts to change flavor. So you try to avoid having the buds appear on your plants. And in our hot July summer months, you can be doing that every day. The basil grows so fast because basil loves the heat. It certainly prefers temperatures over 65 degrees, and that is when basil is going to start to grow. You may not like St. Louis summer, but basil loves St. Louis summer. And so we want to let it grow and let it flourish in the heat, and so that we have mounds and mounds of basil that we can play with and do things with, because that is the pleasure of it. Now, I usually get people who want to know, well, how do I preserve it? What can I do to preserve it? My first suggestion is eat the basil. The best place for your basil is in your stomach. Because part of I say that is dried herbs have a very different flavor from fresh herbs. And we can buy dried herbs, but what you have in the opportunity of growing your own herb garden is that you have a fresh basil that you can use fresh. And it's a different taste from when you dry it. Basil has the basil that we're familiar with has a very mild licorice flavor. When it's dried, that flavor becomes more pronounced. And if you ever make a marinara sauce with fresh basil and a marinara sauce with dried basil, you'll immediately recognize it's two different flavors. There's a difference of the taste in there. Not to say that it's bad, that one is better than the other. They're just different. And so we're here talking about the fresh and the beauty of the fresh basil. So the basil is at the herb garden, at the Herb Society sale, we sell a whole lot of different basils. And you all are probably familiar with Genovese. I guess I should. There we go. Or sweet basil. Basil originated, or at least became popular in the city of Genoa, which is the birthplace of Christopher Columbus. And if you go to Genoa, pesto and basil are everywhere. And they like to say that their basil is better than anybody else's because it grows in this salty air of the Mediterranean, and that gives it an extra special flavor for the pesto. And this is the basil we all know and love, and we've had countless times. But the Herb Society is about promoting all the other different kinds too, because there's more than one basil in the world, and it's worth growing multiple basils in your backyard because they all have different attributes, different tastes, and different things that you can do with the basil that are well worthwhile. And by the way, I think the position of your herb garden is very important at your home, because it should be as close to your kitchen as possible. If your herb garden is down the hill or over the rocky path, the herbs won't get into your dinner. And many of these herbs are added right at the end of making the dish. In other words, the pop of the basil, because it's such a delicate herb, is usually added as a garnish or at the end of cooking. And so you want to cut that basil right before you're going to add it to the dish. If you pick your basil too early and you chop it up and prepare it, it starts to darken and it isn't as pretty. So you want that flavor punch right at the right when you're ready to serve. Well, when we serve, we're in a little mess. We're tizzy. We're trying to get everything together on the table. The food is hot. So my preference is to have my herb garden, which I do container pots, because then it's movable and I can keep it right by my kitchen door. I keep my pots right by my kitchen door so my basil is there and available. So that's always my recommendation. You can have, other plants out in a better spot in your garden, but the herbs next to the kitchen door means they'll get into dinner every night and you won't miss putting the herbs in. But with that caveat, basil wants full sun, and you will not get a good growth of your plant if you don't have full sun. So be sure to make sure that your basil plant is always in full sun. So this is our traditional Genovese that any kitchen garden has got to have that one. But let's go on to learn some of the others. There we go. Rutgers Devotion is a kind of Genovese basil, and it has some attributes of being a little hardier and more resistant, and it's very fast growing. So that is a benefit. Sometimes because people have in their mind Genovese, they don't look at some of the other varieties of basil that might be good to use, and Rutgers is a really nice basil. This is also a basil that's used in pesto, but you notice that the leaves are variegated, and so that green and white color can be very pretty. For example, on a salad caprese with the sliced tomatoes and the fresh mozzarella cheese, or on a margarita pizza to have that variegated color of it. But it is not although they call it pesto perpetua, it's not usually the basil that's put into pesto, partly because it has a little hint of lemon to it. So it's a slightly different flavor on the basil, which is just adds a little different thing to it. But it does have a very important attribute: no flowers. so you don't have to worry about deadheading the basil. And then my next favorite basil, I love this basil. This is the basil I absolutely have to plant every year. It's called lettuce leaf, and the leaves are giant. They're like as big as my hand, and they're beautiful leaves. And you you sort of gently tear those leaves and put them in a salad, and you get this pop of basil flavor. You can the leaves are big enough that you can use them as wrappers to wrap around a summer roll or to wrap around with other ingredients to it. In our St. Louis Herb Society cookbook, which is, of course, available for sale at the shop, there's a recipe I love in there, which is chicken with the mammoth basil leaf, because that's what you put in the stuffing. So you have your chicken breast, you lay your huge basil leaf on top, and you roll it up and then cook it. I mean, they're just a glorious leaf for so many different fun preparations. And also, you can certainly make pesto out of the mammoth leaf, and you're not sitting there pick, because you just have a couple of leaves and you have enough to make a pesto out of. So the mammoth lettuce leaf basil, it really fits its name. It grows very well in this climate. All summer long, you get these giant leaves of basil, and I promise you, you'll find all kinds of things to do with giant leaves of basil. So now we go with colors, because basil is not just green. We may think of it as a green machine, but basil there are basils with purple stems, they're basil with purple flowers, and they're basil with purple leaves. And they can be beautiful to have that glorious purple color. But I wouldn't make a pesto out of a purple leaf, because it's going to be a muddy, dark color. It's not going to be that vivid color that we like to see that we associate with basil. So the amethyst is actually a type of Genovese basil, but it's been bred for this purple color. So that is a basil that's great to use as a garnish. And of course, you'll startle your guests, because they're not used to seeing a purple leaf basil. What is this? But it's great fun as a garnish, but I wouldn't cook with it. But it does have some real beauty to it. And then we get into some that are, I would say, almost ornamental. This has the name cardinal because of the red flowers. Well, this is a culinary herb, but I think people usually plant it because it's so strikingly beautiful. And if you want to use it culinarily, of course, you don't want it to flower. And if you're interested in it ornamental, you want it to flower. So it's one of those things. But it is the green and red is such a striking design in your herb garden of the cardinal. So next up is another red or purple basil called red Reuben. It has a very strong flavor, and because of that is usually used just as an ornamental basil. And then we have some basils that are truly ornamental and not designed for culinary use. This is an African blue, which is really striking in your garden, and it can be and as you can see, it's flowered here. Because it's ornamental, we're not deadheading, we're letting it flower. And particularly, we let this one flower because the bees love this plant. It really will attract the bees. And it can be quite stunning in its glorious purple flowers with the green leaves of the African blue. And another ornamental is called a Greek columnar. It has nothing to do with Greek food. It just reminds people of a column of Greek, because it's bushy, it's tall and narrow, and can be. It holds its shape quite well, and is fast growing and very, very bushy. So that's what's great about the Greek columnar basil. But that's also an ornamental basil, not for cooking. And now I know we sell these basils, and I should not denigrate any of the 14 basils that we sell. But I have to tell you, the next basil is my least favorite basil in the world. The leaves are so tiny. You will be forever picking the leaves off of this. And this is called spicy globe. And these, the leaves are the size of thyme leaves. And you know how hard it is to pick thyme leaves off. So you're picking off these leaves, and you'll try to get a cup of basil for something, and you'll feel like it's taken you 2 hours to pick off the leaves. But that said, it really looks like a boxwood. It's a great hedge. So I put spicy globe, although it is a fully edible culinary herb. To my mind, it's in the ornamental category because it's so fussy to work with, but that's my personal. I'm sure I got some herbers here who rave about it, but I'll let them have their own program. All right, so I have 2 basils. We are selling 2 basils that have other flavors besides the traditional basil anise flavor to them. One is lemon. And this is the lemon basil, it is certainly a culinary herb. Certainly, you can add it to dishes. But I think if you're anticipating a strong basil flavor, be aware that this is has a lemon taste to it, and so that will change the end flavor of your dishes. So you want to use it appropriately when you think that you might want to add a basil lemon taste to a dish, as opposed to the pure basil taste. And then the other flavored basil that we have is cinnamon, which I would describe as a unique flavor. You're either going to like it or not like it, but it is a culinary herb, but it has a cinnamon flavor to it. I would say with both the lemon basil and the cinnamon basil, they're basils you want to use sparingly. They're not going to be your daily basil. And we do use basil daily, right? All right, now we're going to get to the really strong tasting basils. Thai basil has become extremely popular with the rise of Thai food and people going to Thai restaurants and making Thai food. Thai basil is a very distinctive flavor basil. First of all, it has a bright red stem with green leaves, so it's very easy to recognize. And it is not substitutable. If you make any of the traditional Thai dishes and you try to use a Genovese basil, your dish will not taste right, I promise you. The Thai basil has a much stronger anise or licorice flavor. The Thai basil has a pungency to it that is, it really brings alive the dish. And so there are a couple of very famous dishes that rely on Thai basil. And if you like this kind of food, it's so much better to have it growing outside your kitchen than to try to source it to make the Thai dish, because it can be a little difficult to source when you have a hankering for Thai food. So one is the Vietnamese pho soup, usually is garnished with Thai basil. Another one is the Taiwanese 3-cup chicken, which is also done with Thai basil. And then the third favorite dish that I love to make with Thai basil is drunken noodles. There's nothing drunk about drunken noodles. It's just that you eat the noodles when you have a hangover. and it's a curative, not only because of the Thai basil, but because of all the chili peppers in it. But in each of these dishes, when you look at the recipe for the dish, and this will be a recipe to serve, say, 2 to 4 people, the recipe calls for 2 packed cups of Thai basil leaves. You really need a lot in it. And so the only way to get that kind of quantity of Thai basil to appropriately make these dishes is to grow it yourself. And so that's why I always recommend that if it's a cuisine you like, absolutely grow Thai basil. Just keep it separate from your Genovese. Always be aware whether it's Italian night or Thai night. But the result of having that intense flavor in the drunken noodles or the 3-cup chicken, it's like one of those things, it doesn't taste right otherwise. And if you've had any of these recipes in a restaurant and you're looking to replicate that flavor, both of these dishes are quite easy to make, but this Thai basil leaves is the critical factor to make that flavor come alive. And that's why it's such a great basil to plant. And then the final basil, I'd almost call it a controversial basil. Holy basil or tulsi. And the reason I say controversial is because it is so intensely aromatic. And you will, if I had a plant of tulsi of the far corner of the room, I could smell it here. It is very, very pungent. But the holy basil is used in some particular Thai dishes. There's a great Thai stir fry. They call it holy basil chicken stir fry, which after you make it, you then put a poached egg on top of it or a fried egg on top of it and eat it. It's a great dish to make. But it's an intense flavor and it's an intense aroma. A lot of people will make a tea out of the holy basil. It's very popular now. Some people are putting in tea gardens, i.e., the plants that you would use to brew to make some tisanes or some flavored hot water drinks that you want to have. And the holy basil is part of that. It's called holy basil because it is used ritually, I believe, in the Hindu religion, and so it's quite popular because of that. But it is it is a basil that you need to deadhead regularly, and you have to be religious about deadheading because it is so, it just grows and grows so prolifically, and that aroma kind of takes over everything. And so it's going to be a flavor that you either like or don't like. It's not going to be a flavor that everyone's going to say, yeah, that's great, like Genovese. It's going to be a flavor where you either like it or you don't like it. But it is a very signature flavor for a lot of Asian dishes. And if that's something that interests you, it's really quite interesting to grow. Now, with all of these basils, I think there may be one or two that can be perennial if we don't get too cold of a winter, but basically we're talking annual. You plant them, they grow prolifically, you enjoy them, and then at the first frost, your basil is dead. That's how we know when we have the first frost is 32 degrees, the basil immediately dies. And so when you have something that is so of the season, my feeling is you take the time to have, every dish that you make, be flavored with such a summer flavor. I'm often asked in cooking school, well, can't we make, I don't know, salad caprese in January? And I'm like, no, we cannot make salad caprese in January because it's the taste of summer. And to me, the taste of basil is the taste of summer. And so you want to enjoy how prolific these plants can be, how big they'll grow, and how much you can use them in so many different dishes during those hot months of summer. So, for example, since I have to give you ideas for things that aren't pesto, I do a basil zucchini soup, and it's it's an obscene amount of basil that goes into it. It's really the zucchini is just a vehicle for the basil. So I think my recipe is 4 cups of packed basil, and 2 cups of basil leaves go into cooking with the zucchini. Then I puree it, and then when I pour it into the bowls, I garnish it with 2 more cups of basil, and so you just get this flavor punch that, to me, is the essence of summer. And that's why I so enjoy doing it. But other things that you can do with your basil, remember that basil is a member of the mint family. So I think we all know mint juleps. Well, why not a basil julep? Because instead of using mint in your simple syrup, use basil. So simple syrup is equal parts granulated sugar and water that you bring to a boil to dissolve the sugar. And instead of putting the mint in there, put the basil in there, let the basil steep in the sugar water, then use that to make your cocktails, and you will have a fabulous basil taste in your cocktails, which is a great way. The other thing you can do with a basil simple syrup is to flavor fruit, like strawberries. So cut up fresh strawberries. Instead of sprinkling them with granulated sugar, pour some basil simple syrup over the strawberries to sweeten them up. And then that gives you the flavor taste of the basil in with the strawberries, which is a natural combination to have. So those are things that I like to do. There are also a couple of salads that I think are fabulous with basil. One is the 3-ingredient watermelon, cheese, basil. All you need. Your choice of cheese. Watermelon, cheese, basil. Another one is tomato, corn, basil. That's all you need. Just put it together and put a little vinaigrette on it, and you're ready to go. And they're beautiful salads too. And that is kind of the purpose of using the basil at its peak, where it's still freshly green and beautifully vibrant in the salad, which is why I try to add the basil right before serving, so that you see the vibrant color of the green and it hasn't started to wilt or turn a dark color. All right, but what about pesto? I know some of you still want pesto. The traditional pesto, the Genovese pesto, is a combination of basil, Parmesan cheese, garlic, and toasted pine nuts, all mashed together with olive oil. But there are many pestos that beyond that. You certainly don't have to just limit yourself to the Genovese style of pesto. In fact, the Italians they're all very insular and in Italy, not the one. They all like their own home territory, their own home turf. And when I was working in Rome, I once asked my employer, "Well, what about why don't we make pesto?" And she looked at me, gave me the most disapproving look, and said, "What are you, Genovese?" We don't do pesto in Rome, but it's still a great flavor to add to things. I have a secret, though. I always put spinach in my pesto, and spinach keeps the pesto green. Because if you just grind up the pesto, like in the food processor, it will darken and become and not so pretty. And we like to see pesto be a bright green. So spinach is my food coloring for pesto. Just a handful of spinach. You're not going to taste it. The basil flavor dominates the flavor. But there are other herbs that you can use also in addition to or in lieu of spinach or things. There's a traditional Italian pesto that's half parsley, half basil, because that will also, the parsley helps to keep the green color in the basil. I like the version that puts in a little fresh oregano in addition to the basil, because oregano has a bitterness to it, and that gives it a little bit more punch into the pesto. So one of my favorite types of soup is a minestrone or bean soup, or and the way I like to serve it is you have your cup of hot soup with all the flavors in there, the cooked beans and things like that, and on the side you serve a bowl of pesto. And you, the diner, puts in as much or as little pesto that you want into your bowl of soup. It turns the soup bright green. You suddenly get this wonderful aroma that pops up because of the pesto hitting the hot liquid in your bowl of soup. And it just looks beautiful to do that. If you put the pesto in the soup pot too early and then try to serve the soup, the pesto gets muddied. The color gets muddied, and the cheese drops to the bottom of the soup pot, and the cheese sticks, and then you have to scrub the pot. So you want to add the pesto at the table, because then you get the real punch of the flavor on that. But the French have a soup along these lines, which they call soup au pistou. That is not Peastew, but that's Pistou, pistou, not a pea stew. And this is from southern France. And the soup au pistou is done, it has basil in it, but it doesn't have pine nuts. Instead, they puree a fresh tomato in with the pesto. So that's another way of making pesto, is that you don't have to limit yourself to just basil. I've done pestos where I've made them with raw collard greens, with broccoli rabe, with kale, and they're wonderful flavors to grind up with or without the basil. You can start having, pesto competitions, what pesto is the best of all. But these bright green flavors can be a wonderful additive, whether it's as a dip or as a sandwich spread, or as to toss pasta with. The pesto can be so delightful to add to so many different things. And that is, I feel as though basil has become the most universally loved herb of all the herbs that we sell at the herb sale. I mean, we sell it's an amazing number of herbs: rosemary, oregano, lavender, chives, parsley, on and on. Herbs you probably haven't heard of that are good too, like lemon balm, lemon verbena. I mean, thyme. I'm missing many great herbs, but they're wonderful herbs. But there's no doubt that basil is the first one to sell. No matter how many basil plants we get, they always sell out first. It's universally popular. Everybody loves to have it. And I hope today that I've given you ideas that you can expand your basil repertoire, get more than one variety, and do more cooking with it than just Italian food, because it can lend itself to such a variety of great dishes. And with that, I would love to take questions.
I'm wondering, what are the trees that are perennials?
Oh, the question is, what basils are perennials? They're perennials if we don't have a winter like we just had a winter. I mean, we are a little cold for it, but in certain climates, they can be perennial. And I think it's the holy basil. Is there any other one that is? Is the African blue a perennial? I'm not sure. All right. Read the label at the herb sale.
I'm coming to you with the microphone.
Well, I think last winter that was we had quite a cold snap in January, and that makes it a little difficult. Yes, I think.
And what's the best kind of soil for basil?
The best kind of soil for basil, because I'm a container gardener, I just get some potting mix and put it in the potting mix. And the thing about basil is that I have always found if you get a good potting mix, it will grow like weeds. I don't feel the need to fertilize it through the summer. It will just happily, as long as it's in full sun, plenty of drainage. Basil and all herbs, they don't like to have wet feet. You always always want to make sure that you have plenty of drainage. And this is always a tip from Mary Hammer, because make sure your pot is big enough for the basil. Basil's going to grow, and don't try to cram the basil in some little tiny pot. You want to give it room to grow so that it has plenty of room, so that you can get a nice, healthy basil plant that isn't constricted.
On that note of growing like a weed, maybe it really isn't basil, but I planted opal basil just in a tiny container under a grow light. It takes over that whole podium in like every corner of my yard now.
Well, opal basil is one of the purple basils, and it is a basil, and so you're wintering it over by just under the grow lights. So what do you do with the opal basil? Well, I have found that the purple basils are a little harder to use culinarily because of the color. I mean, that's just because we eat first with our eyes, and we want the food to be beautiful. And our first thought is basil is green. And the purple I like to use more as an accent piece. But it sounds like you've gotten yourself a particularly invasive basil. Wow. All right, you've got me on opal. I don't have a good use for that much opal basil. Sorry. Okay, so yes.
What are the pests that are basil's prone to? Garden pests.
There are some pests that will eat the leaves that can always be, and I'm not sure what they are, but there's no question that sometimes I have grown basil and the leaves start to be eaten up. And I don't know, maybe one of the other herb members has a good solution to keeping pests away from basil. It doesn't happen every year. It's sort of like every once in a while I'll find something that is enjoying my basil more than I'm enjoying the basil. That's always very frustrating. Yes.
Can you go down the list of the basic basil ingredients?
You mean pesto?
I mean, pesto. Sorry.
Sure. The basic Genovese pesto is, and I usually make it in a food processor, is as I fill up the food processor with as many basil leaves that will fit, I put in a clove of garlic, or if that's too strong, you could do a couple of cloves of roasted garlic, and if you want a milder taste on that. And then Parmesan cheese, and then I run the machine, and then toasted pine nuts. You can certainly make pesto with other nuts. I have walnuts, even coconut, pecans, pistachios is a good nut in pesto because it's kind of green on green. And they all can do a nice job. You run the machine, and with the machine running, you drizzle in your olive oil, and then you make a smooth paste. At that point, you want to put your pesto, if you're not immediately using the pesto, you want to put it in a container, like a ramekin or a little plastic container, and then pool a nice shimmer of olive oil on top of the pesto. What that will do is will keep the pesto from oxidizing. Because then it's not exposed to the air and it won't turn color, and that can stay in your refrigerator. Pesto also freezes very well.
I have a question. Since you're always using pots for growing, what do you do with the soil that was the previous season? Do you replace it, or can you use it over again?
You know, that's a great question. I remember my husband getting into a big fight with another gardener about whether it's new dirt or old dirt. What I like to do is I have my wheelbarrow. I dump out all my old pots. I take out all the detritus that's in there. I put in a fresh bag of potting soil, mix it all up together, and then put that into the pots.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Any final questions? All right. Well,
No.
with that, I think we just want to.
Oh, wait, how about a
I got
question
one
in the back?
Okay, here
There are
I'm
a couple
coming.
of questions in the back.
That's good. We've got a few minutes, so let's take advantage of her expert knowledge while we have it.
So when you harvest your basil, and you said you always take it from the top, are you just snipping like a couple inches down, or is there the right and wrong way to harvest it from the top?
The right and wrong way to harvest the basil from you always want to harvest from the top. Now, if you want to have a bigger stem, I mean, after all, if I can talk about this farm here, you see how they snipped it all the way down here. Now, I think actually it's a cheat on the customer because there are no leaves here, and I would have snipped it here. But you do want that stem to regrow. And the whole point is that the stem needs to regrow. So you don't want to snip it beyond all the leaves. But generally I like to snip it here, leaving growth underneath.
Here in the back row.
I've got a question about the end of the year. If you have a real good production of basil, at the end of the year, do you ever dry it or freeze it to use it in the winter?
So I do not dry or freeze it to use in the winter. Usually when I get the notice of the first frost, which can be any day from October 3rd to November 21st, last year was the first frost, I then hustle into my garden and cut all the basil before the first frost comes. And then I just try to eat as many dishes with basil in the next couple of days. Yes.
Yes. How do you control the little? I think they're aphids, little bugs that get on the basil.
Well, I have had little bugs, and that was a question that we had over here, and I welcome advice on how to control that.
I mean, I just use dishwashing soap and some water and spray it on the plant.
Does it work?
Kind of. Not real well.
You know, as gardeners, we are always fighting the pests. That's just the nature of it. Oh, another question. So can you bring your basil pot inside to try to winter over? We actually, at Kitchen Conservatory, Marcy, did you do this? Bring the pot in and try it, correct, because we have this sort of pathetic-looking basil plant by the window. It's not warm enough. It's not enough sun. And it hasn't grown any. So this basil plant is not going to give me good production this summer. I need new basil plants. It's wintering over herbs inside has always been a little bit of a challenge. If you've ever tried to winter over rosemary, they can be getting the light, the humidity, and the temperature right inside your house as opposed to outside can be always a little challenging in making a perfect solution for the herbs on inside, which is why my advice is to go back to eat in season, and then you're not worried. You're not thinking about basil in the winter. You're thinking about basil when you have a homegrown tomato, which is the right time to think about basil. All right, one more.
When is the best time to start a seed and how?
So it is, you can grow basil from seed very well because it does grow well, but you want to make sure that you're not going to have a cold snap because basil does not like it cold. So if you start from seed, you'll have to start, in a greenhouse or in a warm, inside, and the basil doesn't go outside till you're sure of the last frost because basil dies at 32 degrees.
Okay, well, on that, I just want to thank Anne again, and I want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you all for coming. My pleasure.
If you did not get your herb questions answered, basil or otherwise, there are members of the St. Louis Herb Society here. There's a table outside. They'd be happy to answer any additional questions. And again, join us on April 24th. Bring that membership card or any proof of membership for this member sale at the end of the day on the 24th, or if you can't make it then on the 25th. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you all for coming.